Welcome back, class, to another episode of Trump Whisperer, translating stupid. Today we head back to Planet Cray Cray to meet their king, one Donald Jailbird Trump. He's on a Zoom call with some businessmen, and boy does he sound stupid. They ask him a question, and they know this man is their mark. And by mark, I mean skid mark. This man talks much shit, and none of it makes sense. They knew it, I know it, and it's time for you to know it. Oh, and by the way, don't forget to pick up your military-grade tinted Imaginary Stoopid Goggles on the way in. You don't want to see this shit with the naked eye. Because if you do, by the end of this video, you will be Stevie Wonder up in this bitch. You don't want that. Not unless you can play the piano and sing well. Otherwise, you fuck. Let's listen.
Can you talk about your impoundment authority?
Hold it. I want to make sure we're all on the same plane. We need to understand what the impoundment authority is. Because you can bet your whitey tighties that this fool don't know what they just asked him. So I want all of us to be more educated than him when asked this question. The impoundment authority is where the president has the authority to be able to impound funds that may have been allocated by the House and Senate to give to someone else. Let's say they allocate so much money to schools, which will give teachers a healthy raise and then also invest in our education in a very strong way. Okay, Trump gets it. His rich friends say no. In his mind, he says no. I want to give them less. He decides to impound that money. Then he has to go back to the House and Senate, do something that's called a rescission, which is basically saying, I don't want to give this money. You guys rethink it over. He has 45 days to hold that money and for them to change their mind. If the House and Senate does not change their mind, he must move forward with allocating that money. If they decide to change their mind, that money is now sent back. It's held, and then they have to reallocate it within that fiscal year. They have to spend that money somehow, some way. What these rich people are hoping for is that that money will go into their pockets, and they're literally asking this fool, we want to know about your impoundment authority because we don't want you wasting that money. We want you giving it to us. And that's what this fucking conversation is about. But this dipshit goes on and on because he don't know what the fuck they're really asking him. So he rambles like the idiot he is. Get ready. This is the part. If you don't have your goggles on, you bound to shit yourself. Let's get it.
Intention, you mentioned that in the past, that you could go in and reduce the bureaucracy and the spend. I always tell people my position going into the election is less that I'm interested in knowing what the government's going to do for me, and I'm more interested in knowing what the government's going to stop doing that doesn't do any good for anyone. And there seems to be a lot of that. And I'm really curious to hear, sir, how you think about using the impoundment authority vested in you as president of the United States to reduce some of the bureaucracy, wasteful spending, and create accountability. And is there a team that you've built around you to help build a specific plan on backing out of some of these issues?
Right. We have a lot of money floating around that should be brought back into the government, should be given back to DC, to Washington. As you know, there was a lot of money given out over the last couple of years, especially my money was given out to help us with COVID. Then they took money and they have no idea what they're even doing with it.
His money on COVID. Do you know in 2020 how much he paid in taxes, this billionaire? $750. Most of us paid more than that. And he says his money. You mean the government money, our money. Because your money going to taxes was $750. The fuck you talking about? He already starting off. The first words that come out of his mouth, complete lie. And he ain't even started answering the damn question. Let's continue to listen to Sir Dipshit lie his ass off.
That money can be given back, and it should be given back, and things can be done with that money that are positive. But there are many, many things. I'll give you an example. Education. We spend more on education per pupil than any other country. We spend numbers and yet we're terrible at it. We're down at the bottom of the list, and yet we're at the top of the list. I am going to, very early in the administration, we're going to send education back to the states.
Stop the train. I want to talk to you guys for a hot second. Anytime you hear a leader, usually in the conservative party, I haven't heard it from anybody else, say, send something back to the states, please stop listening and run the other direction as fast, as hard as you fucking can. Because that shit is going to take you back to the fucking Stone Ages. And you do not want to go backwards. We want to go forwards, baby. We want to make this country better. We don't want to make it what it was before. America has not been greater than it is now. But wait a minute, let me stop that. America hasn't been greater since before they got rid of the Roe versus Wade. They're going backwards. So we're just a little bit less great than we were. He just said the key words that's going to take us back even further. Sending something back to the states. Ladies and gentlemen, you got to understand something. If somebody says send something back to the states, that means that the states had it at one point. They couldn't figure it out. So then they went to the federal courts, the Supreme Court, and they made a decision to allow this thing to happen because the states couldn't figure it out individually. So we have over like 50 years or so of Roe versus Wade in place. The only people who had a problem with it were conservative nut fucking jobs. Blowing up fucking Planned Parenthood and all that type of shit. These are the people that cared about life and was trying to kill people to stop something called life. It made no sense. See how batshit crazy this is? So these people are now steering the ship, the nut jobs. And every time they say send something back to the states, it just means they want more nut jobs to be in control. They sent abortions back to the states. And now women are having to leave their own state to get abortions because they may die if they hold the baby to term. Even if the child was raped and their family's like, I'm not allowing my baby to have this baby as a baby from the person who raped her. Are you crazy? They're going to have to leave their state that they love and have paid taxes for, own property in, to go to another state to get it done. Then come back and hopefully don't get arrested for fleeing to another state to commit a crime. That's what's happening because they sent it back to the states. And that's what they've always wanted, going backwards. And now he wants to do that with education. Send education back to the states. Now, what you just learned, ladies and gentlemen, obviously the states were taking care of it at one point in time, couldn't figure it the fuck out, and the federal government had to come in and say, hey, this is what the rule is. We have to understand that some places are poor, some places can't afford things, some people don't pay property taxes because they rent and so forth and so on, so their schools are trash and these schools aren't. We got to regulate it somehow. Instead of letting the states do it, the federal government did it. Now, don't get me wrong. They need to work on some shit. But that's writing more policies to be able to fix it instead of getting rid of it. Now, let's give it back to the states. Fuck all that. Do you understand giving it back to the states? Most of these states are going to take that money and reallocate it somewhere else. They don't believe in education. If you don't believe me, keep listening to this dipshit speak. And please pay attention to every word.
We're going to give them approximately half the number of dollars, and they're going to have so much money that like they've never had before.
What you talking about? This motherfucker just said, we're going to give them half the money, and they're going to have more money than they ever had before.
Well, doggy.
Boy, that's some mental dipshittery gymnastics I've ever heard in my motherfucking life. You're going to give me half the money, and I'm going to have more money than I ever had before. And they want this dipshit to be president. I wouldn't make this motherfucker the president of the Little Rascals gang. Yes, I said it. I'd rather have Spanky. Let's carry on.
Because they can spend a fraction of what we're spending right now and have much better school systems. As an example, you could name many. You go to Nebraska, you go to Iowa, you go to many states. We'll do a far better job than we're doing right now. And they'll do it for a fraction of the cost. We'll save a tremendous amount of money and have better. Some states, I don't believe will do a very good job, but they're going to have to learn to. But we have, I would say most of our states will do a much better job. I think all of them will do better than, you can't do worse than what we're doing right now, but all of them will do better. But some will be absolutely education, a factory in a positive sense, factories. We are going to close up education. We'll have a tiny little group to make sure everyone's teaching at least English and perhaps proper math, et cetera, but very little. Department of Education goes, and education goes back to the states and where it belongs. I mean, where it absolutely belongs. And you're going to save a lot of money. You can look at interior with that. You can look at environmental with a lot of that, where the environment can be controlled by the states instead of this big bureaucracy in Washington, D.C. I mean, what do you do when China is burning all the coal and they're sending the ashes over the United States? Because that's what happens. It takes 3.5 days and it blows over the United States. In the meantime, we're keeping things good. We produce clean coal. We're going to produce clean energy, but we have to get back to energy. We're spending trillions of dollars on artificial, weak energy that's not going to fire up our plants. Our plants have to be fired up. We have a phenomena coming up right now, and I was talking about it the other day to David, And that's AI, little things, simple, two little simple letters, but it's big. And I realized the other day, more than anything, when we were at David's house and talking to a lot of geniuses from Silicon Valley and other places, they need electricity at levels that nobody's ever experienced before to be successful, to be a leader in AI. The amount of electricity they need is like double what we have right now and even triple what we have right now. It's incredible how much they need to be the leader. And we're going to have to be able to do that. And a windmill turning with its blade, knocking out the birds and everything else is not going to be able to make us competitive. You'll have China.
What about nuclear, Mr. President?
Now that some of your brain cells have died off after listening to this dipshit, let me address this in a different way. Let's give them a visual of what it would be like if education went back to the states. MAGA minions, do you know the states you live in are mostly Republican-led, right? Yeah. Do you know out of the top 10 states that are the poorest, 8 of them are Republican states, correct? Yes, they are. So if you're not doing well with your schooling and shit like that right now with the funds that you are receiving, let's cut that shit in half and let's see how well you do then. Do you really think that your schools will be better off if you got half the funding? Okay, you do understand the future will be about education. If you don't know shit about AI or technology, you pretty much fucked. A lot of the shit that we do on a normal basis is shifting. See, back in the day, you work with your hands, you had a lot of calluses and shit. Now you gotta work with this motherfucker right here. And you're not gonna do well if you don't have an education. I understand some of y'all farm and put on horseshoes and all that shit. Fine and dandy. But you're gonna be living on welfare for the rest of your fucking life when all the cars are flying and ain't nobody fucking touching a horse. Do you understand the future is coming? And your dumb ass wanna stay in the past, it ain't gonna happen. Point blank period. So look toward the future, even the more recent future. You can see that our cars are electric. You guys keep talking about fossil fuels as if we are never gonna get off of them. We will. Nothing lasts forever. Now, let's discuss what your world would look like if you decide to give education back to the states. Do you understand? Because you guys don't make enough money, your economy and your states are basically trash. By the time you put your budget together, you're already in a deficit. Now, who do you think makes up for your deficit? It is the federal government. Now, who pays more to the federal government than most states combined? That would be California. So California, the Democrat-led state, the one where you guys are always talking shit about, without California, you motherfuckers would be eating corn every day of your fucking life. I don't mean human-grade corn. You'll be eating that animal shit. Because there's no way in hell your states can run without that subsidized money. And he says he wants to cut it in half. Yeah, y'all about to fucking go back to eating hominy grits for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, bitches. But you know what? I'm gonna be excited as fuck when y'all poor as shit and begging this motherfucking liberal state to subsidize your po ass. Go ahead and do exactly what the fuck he's asking to do. And the only one you're gonna hurt is you. See, California's gonna be okay. Most of the more higher economy states gonna be all right. It's mostly the Republican-led states that's gonna get fucked. That's fine by me. Let it be. It is what it is. It's your vote. So you're either gonna vote for your own interests or you're gonna vote for Trump's interests, which is fuck you. Whether you like it with lube or not, it's coming your way. So don't drop the vote because you're gonna get pulled. Now, I'm gonna need you to take off your Imaginary Stoopid Goggles before you shit yourself.